B, City Attorney, would you read the ordinance, please?
Ordinance number 2015-05 of the City of Lake Forest, Florida, approving an amendment to the residential plan unit development to be known as Terra, described in Exhibit A, providing for development standards, providing for severability, conflicts, and an effective date.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Commissioner McBoyd, did you have a question?
I just would like to hear from the gentleman who's developer, I guess. Wondered if he's got any additional thoughts on gates and alternatives to gates.
Troy White, good to see everyone again. Commissioner McBoy, I went back and I looked into defensible spaces, which is the concept that you brought up and that I was familiar with. Oscar Newman, who's the architect who developed the concept, actually put out a really good white paper for HUD in the 90s regarding defensible spaces. And you know, it's interesting because I think Mr. Newman would actually like what we're doing there. He actually extensively uses gates in his again in his plan and his redevelopment of various neighborhoods. So he's not opposed at all to gates, because what he's trying to do with his developments is create a sense of security and ownership among the folks who live within those neighborhoods. And near and dear to my heart, he's also trying to get folks outside of their homes interacting with each other, knowing each other, being good neighbors to each other. And that's really what we're striving to do at Terra. It's a site that is it's a tight site. It's actually it actually lends itself though very nicely to that concept of folks who want to spend time outside of their homes interacting with each other. Again, we've gone over the fact that you know, we're putting substantial funds into the community garden in the middle of the community. And you know, the gates I think are going to serve not to create a fortress, but to create a sense of security and a sense of neighborhood on a very small, you know, piece of land where, again, I hope we walk by. I hope I walk by in a year and find, again, folks mingling within that neighborhood, that small neighborhood, because they know each other and they feel good about where they live and they feel good about interacting with each other. I can tell you now people don't do that. Again, I've met multiple times with the unit owners who are living there now. And again, I can tell you they don't spend time outside. And it's primarily because of a lack of a sense of security. And because of you know, the real issues that are there. And it serves, the community right now serves as a pedestrian cut through for a number of people, and you know, a number of people that you know, that again should be using streets, and they're not. They're cutting through neighborhoods. And so again, I think you and I's mindset is similar with regard to not creating fortresses. I think that you should have no qualms about what we're creating here. I think what we're creating here again is going to be a little oasis on that little piece of land, where again citizens of Lake Worth are going to get to know each other, and they're going to be there to support each other and to befriend each other. And you know, I think that's our goal, and I think that the overall site plan as approved goes a long way toward accomplishing that goal.
You mentioned that you'd put a lot of work into a community garden in your comments just now, and I thought you had indicated last time that you didn't want a community garden.
No, community courtyard. If I misspoke, I thought
okay.
It was the community courtyard.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'm a little disappointed that you didn't get further along in that. I think if you did look a bit more at defensible space and other people who saw it along that line, what he was trying to do, and there's some that I've seen in West Palm Beach that have an elevated steps going up, and a setback, enough of a setback from the road that you clearly create, one of his central concepts is the idea of public-private spaces. The brute force way to do it is put a big fence around it and gates in it. But that's sort of the lowest common denominator way to do it. It also, my grumble with it, in addition to I don't think it fits our community, is that it's misleading. It gives a false sense of community. Those gates, anybody can get into them pretty easily. So people think that they're inside of a fortress, and in fact, that's not the way to provide the safety. I agree with you with the sense of much stronger, and that is in keeping with the defensible space ideas, is getting people outside, getting people to interact. I'm very skeptical. I think you're overly optimistic of the level of contact that will happen. I suspect you're going to have more turnover of people in there, that people will not interact as much. You're going to have difficulties that it's very close to Dixie Highway, so it's not the most appealing place to get outside. But I hope that you're right.
I wasn't here the last time when you were presenting. I live on Federal Highway. I have a fence around my property. I mean, when I first moved into my property, there were a couple of drunk people hanging out on the lounge chairs in my backyard. It happened consistently. I put a fence up. I'm just speaking, again, from hearing it. I looked at this when I was doing my research. I often wondered, there's apartments up by me on the end of my block, and they have their doors directly on Dixie Highway. And I've seen prostitutes and different types of things, and I often think, I wonder how many times 3 o'clock in the morning those people get their doorbells rung. I know, having a gate around my property, I know that it's easy to access a gate, it's easy to open a gate, it's easy to get in a gate, but there is a certain sense of security that you feel, and of having a fence around your property. And I also think the close proximity to areas that we're trying to lift up in the community. I'm excited that you're doing it. I understand some of the challenges that the other units have had there in that location, and if that makes people feel safe, it's I totally get it. So I'm in support of this. We have a couple of public comment cards, Joanne Golden and Peter Tim.
Hi, Joanne Golden, 502 North Conway. Good afternoon. I'm concerned about the gate idea, mainly because of the fact that people use 3rd Avenue all the time to get into Publix. And I just see a huge traffic problem with gates being opened and that 3rd Avenue being the entrance where the gates are. I see during the season that street and that parking lot is totally filled, and people are having a hard time getting in and out of that area. So I don't know if there was a traffic study done with the gates included in the approval of the development, or if it was just an added thing for the Department of Sustainability and the Building Department to just pass this without that proper study, because it seems to me that having a gate right there is going to cause innumerable problems with people getting in and out of Publix and in and out of 3rd Avenue. I hope that could be resolved, if there is a gate, and hopefully there won't be a gate. I know that there's been problems over there, and a lot of it has to do with us uplifting our neighborhoods, and that's what we need to do instead of gating our neighborhoods. Thank you.
Mr. Tim, followed by Peggy Fisher.
Peter Tim, still living on North O Street, and I was shocked at the last meeting when Commissioner McVoy said you've taken out to the garden, and the answer was we are not interested in public improvements. We're interested in selling property. I thought that was a shocker, especially since we have for the last years been talking about Public improvement, you can't do anything without giving us public improvement. Public improvement, something for the public, we've got to do something for the public. And yet they're putting up a 3-story building. They're doing everything they want. And we are getting zilch. I think that's a shame. I realize it's a problem property with all the road going bust and all that, but I still don't want to give the store away. And if you do, I think you're making a mistake. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Fisher?
Peggy Fisher, North A Street. I have no problems with the property being gated. If that's what the owners of that property want to do, it's their property. The gates are not on public roadways, as were there a lot of comments showing up on social media that we were gating 3rd Avenue. There is no gates on public roads. The gates are offset into the property, as the developer talked about, to allow for stacking, so it's not as if they're waiting for the gates to open while they sit on 3rd Avenue. They've got room for them to pull in and wait for the gate to open. In fact, they said they had room for 2 cars to pull in. I use the 3rd Avenue entrance and exit all the time going to Publix, and there is just as much trouble getting in and out right now as there ever is. So I think we need to stop thinking that it's our responsibility to tell someone else how to run their business. If it meets our regulations and our code and is approved by planning and zoning and historic preservation or whatever boards it needs to go through, we need to set aside our personal preference, whether we want our property gated or not gated, and approve what is compliant with our codes. Thank you.
Thank you. Greg Rice, followed by Anthony Murata.
Good evening, Greg Rice, Lulu's. Comment was just made, and I think that we certainly need to start paying attention to this. We have a complete set of code ordinances, land use maps, and what have you that specifically spell out what can and can't be done in a city. And that's there for a multitude of reasons, but one being so that people know what to expect. When we have expended ourselves to go out there and try to make ourselves open and welcome to needed infill and investment, then we continue to sit up here and sometimes, I think, berate those that come up with these ideas. I live in a controlled access community myself, it was certain. And yes, yeah, people can certainly get by gates. I remember as kids growing up, our parents, we never came home and opened the front door with a key. It was always open. I know that gates and locks and all these things, they're only going to keep out the honest people. But in that location, we have controlled access community already in this city. Down on South Lakeside Drive, there's a nice little controlled access community down there. It's been there for a long time, for as long as I can remember. Well, not as long as I can remember, but I remember when it was built. And there are, I'm sure, others around town. Those things are there for a reason. These codes and ordinances are there for a reason. And when we continue to have this kind of discussion at this state of the game about something that is by our code, we need to be a little bit more understanding as to what our personal preferences might be one thing. But if we all like the same thing, Baskin-Robbins wouldn't need 33 flavors of ice cream. This might not be your flavor, but it is certainly something that we need to consider. Please, let's move this along so we can welcome more neighbors into our downtown. Thank you.
Anthony Murata.
I might need it.
Yeah.
Good evening, Anthony Murata, 327 North Lakeside Drive. A couple of weeks ago, I heard from some of the experts on turtles. I happen to be an expert on gated communities, and I do disagree with the comments that have been made from the dais that it doesn't make a difference. It does make a difference. It does affect that. It does create a sense of security, although sometimes a false sense of security and people thinking that they're impenetrable because they're not. If somebody wants to get in, they're going to get in. I have factual data from the communities that my company runs that show that they are safer than the others. So to echo what Greg said, please stop beating this up. Let's get moving on. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Boyd?
Thank you, Mayor. I would propose amending the ordinance, since we're doing this as an ordinance. I would propose amending it to allow a revisitation in some reasonable time after the place is built, since there does not appear to have been a traffic study done with the configuration of the gates, and I think a valid concern is raised. We all are very aware of the heavy amount of traffic next to Publix. So I would suggest that we build in some mechanism to revisit that if there is no problem in a year or two after that. Great. If there is a traffic problem, I think we should leave future commissions a way to deal with that and request that the developer make some change to accommodate that.
We already have a motion and a second on the floor.
Yes, we do.
Vice Mayor?
Yes, we do. Yeah, we do have a motion and a second, and I'm not willing to amend my motion. Couple of things. You know, there's been some discussion about how potential traffic's going to be backed up on 3rd Avenue North. And while I could understand how that comment could be made, because obviously if you put more cars in an area, then there's always potential to have a backup. But I would submit that because that comment was based on anecdotal opinion, that 2nd Avenue South is where the traffic is really born. It's not 3rd Avenue South, or North, I should say. I actually do go to Publix once in a while. My wife makes me go. And I would tell you that most of the traffic that I've seen coming off that project is on 2nd Avenue South. That's where the heavy congestion is. I've never had any trouble exiting on 3rd Avenue North, ever. There's never been a backup on 3rd Avenue North. I'd like to ask the investor, if you wouldn't be embarrassed, how much are you investing in this project?
All told, sir, it'll be.
Just your microphone.
Mr. Maxwell, all told, it'll be in the range of $5.5 to $6 million.
$6 million.
Yes, sir.
And anybody want to do the math on what the ad valorem on $6 million means to the city in terms of tax?
About $35,000 a year.
Okay. Which, you know, 35,000 is 35,000. It's better than a sharp stick in the eye, isn't it? You know, one of the problems that I've said this for years, and I've said this to members of our volunteer board. You know, I constantly get comments back from folks that are doing projects, whether it's a roofing job or some other type of project, where they're confused because either staff and or the volunteer boards are giving them some sort of input, their opinion, if you will, direction on how they want their project to look. When in reality, we already have the rules and the parameters on the books. We should not be giving our opinion. If a project fits within the guidelines and they want to put a cheap $10 shingle on the roof as opposed to the $50 shingle that maybe staff would like to see, it's their property, it's their money, allow them to do that without too much interference. We do this constantly. It's been said over and over and over again. One of the reasons we have a poor reputation in this town as far as being open and embracing of new investment is because of what we're going through here right tonight. We should be thankful that somebody is investing $6 million in our city. We should be thankful that they did it in such a way they complied with our policies and our procedures. There have been projects over the years that I didn't particularly care for. I thought, geez, that's kind of whatever. But I voted for them because it fell within the parameters of our codes and our zoning. We're not here to pass judgment on the quality of the project. We're here to pass judgment, if you want to phrase it that way, on does it fit our rules that we establish and our predecessors established. So if we don't like the rules, if we don't like the codes, if we don't like the LDRs, then you change them going forward. But you don't change them in the middle of the process. So with that said, I'd like to just go ahead and call a vote unless, I think Mr. Amoroso hasn't commented, unless he'd like to comment.
Mr. Amoroso?
I just wanted to give you my opinion, which I've given it to you before. I want to thank you for investing in the city of Lake Worth. And I'll be happy to call the motion.
Got a motion on the floor and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 4-1.
Congratulations, good luck.
Thank you.
Good luck to you. Okay, item 10.